A paper presented by Sir Aloysius A. Nwala, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Lands and Survey, Rivers State, as a panelist at the virtual symposium of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers in commemoration of the 60th independence of our great nation. It is with a great pleasure and honor and privilege that I receive and agree to participate as a panelist in this virtual symposium organized by our great institution. I therefore wish to thank our workaholic and visionary President ESV Emmanuel Wike and his team for inviting me to make this presentation on the menace of land grabbers and duplication of title. The menace of land grabbing and duplication of title have become a recurrent issue in the development of our dear country, as it inhibits development and investment in real estate. To this end, this paper would examine the cause and effect of land grabbing and duplication of title in our country, Nigeria. Given the topic of this symposium, I have decided to address this under the following. What is land grabbing? What is it concerned? Why is land grabbing bad? According to Wikipedia, the term land grabbing is defined as a large-scale land acquisition, either by buying or leasing. Another definition of land grabbing states that it is a situation whereby a person gets possession of land, landed property, illegally or unfairly. Land grabbing can also be said to be the control within through ownership, lease concession contract quota, or general power to control of land by any person, entity, public or private, and domestic, via any means, legal or illegal, for purpose of speculation and extradition of resources. Why is it a concern? Land grabbing occurs when communities and individuals loses access to land, thereby previously used access to land previously used or owned, thereby threatening their livelihood. This land is acquired by outsiders, private investors, companies, government, or national allies. Land purchased or acquired are sometimes encroached upon by land grabbers who, in future, will place those lands back to the market where they would make some good money, thereby displacing the genuine land owners. Why is land grabbing bad? Land grabbing occurs when investors do not consult people or local people before buying the land they live on and do not provide them with fair compensation. Land grabbing usually happens in secrecy and often involves mass eviction of poor families, sometimes violently. Land grabbing threatens the human right to force sovereignty as to make it increasingly hard for local communities to feed themselves because of diversion of food products. Added to that is the fact that the government is suffering from food insecurity and leasing and selling land without mechanism to ensure that investors contribute to improved food security for their population. Land grabbing has negative effects on society. The impact costs many residents to forfeit their properties, worth millions of naira, and have truncated the cooperative and individual land development. It has distorted layout and development plan in some planned areas. Land grabbing has also increased the number of cases in court. This is due to displacement of genuine land owners, thereby impoverishing them. Possible ways of curbing the menace of land grabbing. There is a need for public awareness of the implications of the activities of land grabber to reduce the menace of land grabbing in the country. Land grabbers seems to be challenged by lack of staffs in government setting, ineffective communication channel, and lack of enforcement power rising cases of land grabbers. Sorry, in a lack of enforcement power, hence the rising case of land grabbers. More hands should be employed to properly manage government-acquired lands. We urge the authorities to address the issue with strong political will and ensure that high degree of bureaucracy in reducing high degree of the bureaucracy is reduced drastically in processing land matters. There is a need for effective communication through dedicated telephone lines so that those people can reach appropriate government authorities managing government acquired land in case where land grabbing occurs. On duplication of title, we have to look at the possible ways and prefer solution. I shall take River State as a case study. Double allocation of plots gives rise to duplication of title. Absence of comprehensive allocation list approved by the governor in red ink. That is, the allocation list signed in red ink by the governor sometimes never gets to the director of lands office and staff who prepare the certificate of occupancy. And the absence of such list encourages double allocation and duplication of title. Reckless plot partitioning without approval of the governor. The original parcels already allocated were partitioned and given different plot numbers and descriptions. Certificates of occupancy were registered in new property history, different from the original plot that were earlier created. The absence of good data bank where all allocations are reflected. If there is a good data bank for all allocated plots, it will be difficult for already allocated plots to be reallocated without the proper cancellation of the earlier ones. The breach of allocation procedure. The failure of officials to comply with laid down allocation procedure is responsible for most multiple allocations leading to double duplication of title, allocations made without survey. The Land Use and Allocation Committee should be set up and allow it do the work in keeping with the Land Use Act of 11, Law of Federation of Nigeria 2004. Number of plots. In town planning designs layout, upon which allocations were being made at times are at variance with the final layout design from the land surveyors. Thus, the number of plots physically available for allocation are most times less than the number of allottees, that is, allocations. Attempts to substitute plots leads to multiple allocation and duplication of title. Giving survey jobs on contract where layout plans are not deposited in the office of the Surveyor General. As a result of the absence of layout plans produced by private surveyors, plots in such layouts were allocated by approximation of numbers of available plots, which lead to multiple allocation and duplication of title. Having gone through the possible causes of multiple allocation, which leads to duplication of title, the effect of this are as follows. One, it erodes trust that will be investors. It erodes trust of would be investors since the records in the land registry may not be reliable. This encourages investors and investment. It increases the frequency or number of litigation in court of law, which may take long time to adjudicate and final judgment given. It reduces the land development, which in turn reduces creation of wealth and equally tells on the overall economy of the state. In conclusion, this paper has attempted to point out the causes and effects of land grabbing and duplication of title. I recommend the adoption of systematic land titling, establishment of functional land registry in the state and local government areas, the establishment of a GIS-based land information system that will track land records in relation to its actual position on ground. Thank you for listening. So on that note, I think I can entertain some few questions before I will dash out. So, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Iwala, for making it brief, concise, and precise. We thank you very much once again. I want to ask you very quickly, bearing in mind that the activities of land grabbers can be so violent, many times they come to site with weapons such as cutlass, gun, and other weapons, attacking landholders. I want to ask, in Rivers State, are there existing laws and regulations to check the activities of land grabbers in Rivers State? And if yes, how effective are these laws and regulations?
Of course, for now, we have a committee, which I'm also a member at the government set of the Land Recovery Committee. So we in Rivers State have tried to identify those lands that are government acquired land, which the land grabbers has gone into. So those land grabbers that has gone into government land to partition and distort the layout plan are being tracked. And some of them, or most of them, that are being charged to court, and the court would have its turn to try them and also know why they've been doing that. Presently, the state is looking towards that, and the law to that effect is said to be put in place. But generally, the committee is handling that. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you now, sir.
Okay. So I'm sure you have heard what's my response to that.
Well taken, and want to thank you very much for your time, for making this wonderful presentation. And we hope and believe that whenever you are called upon for this type of assignment, you will gladly answer us. I want to say thanks for coming, and God bless you. Bye.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. So on that note, I'll plead to leave your presence and meet up my other assignments for today. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much. ESV Great Ederica Angela. Are you there? ESV Great Ederica Angela, can you hear me? Oh, good morning, madam.
Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, madam. How are you, ma'am?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure having you on board this morning, speaking live from Abuja. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We still want to beg our honorary fellow, Mr. Bodiago, to please allow madam to please make a very brief presentation due to the present national assignment. ESV Great Ederika Angela is the Director of Lands in Federal Ministry of Works and Housing. She's an alumnus of Rivers State University and Lagos State University. He's a member of many national committees, including the committee that established the Nigeria Mortgage Refinance Company. She has attended many trainings in Namibia, USA, and beyond. Madam, a very good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning,
And we are
moderator
also,
and every other person present at this symposium. Thank you very much.
thank you, our dear board member of our Estate Surveillance and Valorization Board of Nigeria. Madam, the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, September 2020, in their release, noted that there is an overall decrease in the prevalence of bribery in Nigeria from 2016 to 2019, except in land registry, which increased from 21% to 26% in 2019, meaning that the level of corruption in land registry has increased from 21% to 26% in 2019. In other words, the land registry has remained a cesspit for corruption among many public officers in Nigeria, as claimed by the available document. And I was privileged to be in your national workshop that you organized in February, wherein you gather all the directors in Nigeria to further faction strategy on how land administration can be better in Nigeria. Many people were not privileged to be in that wonderful workshop to hear the good work you have been doing in curbing corruption and ensuring effective and smooth land administration in Nigeria. And now you are here today. Madam, can you please take us through the challenges of land registry in Nigeria, what you are doing to ensure effective land administration in Nigeria? Welcome, madam.
Okay, thank you, my great moderator. I want to also appreciate the National Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers for inviting me as a panelist to this symposium. And I want to also thank our vibrant president, ESV Chief Emmanuel Wike, for this privilege, and other members present at this symposium. Like you rightly said, I'm going to take us through the memory lane a bit of how land registry came to be and how we branched out to form Federal Land Registry. And thereafter, I will try to take on some of the challenges that faces land registries. And I will also try to see a way I will profile some solutions. And I want to believe that I'll be followed systematically as I go through my preparation for this symposium. Thank you very much. Okay, as a way of introduction, I want to say that land and title registration as a process of perfecting documentation and registration of interest through title on landed properties in Nigeria dates back to the colonial era. The essence is to ensure the availability of public records of registered titles, interests on land to guide and provide credible information on which basis genuine transactions in land can be consummated. The first of such registries was established in Lagos in 1863 by the colonial government, but later codified under the Land Registry Act of 1924. In 1967, with the creation of Lagos State, the Land Registry moved over to states and FG, and federal government titles were registered there until 1992, when the Federal Land Registry was set up by Decree, number 3 of 1992, when the, on land belonging to the federal government. Since then, the registry has registered over 35,000 titles and generated revenue in excess of 65 million. At inception of land registration in Nigeria, until a few years back, the analog and cumbersome approach, otherwise referred to as the sporadic system, was employed. Under this, all registration processes were manually done, and this created confusion with files littering the whole places, while few lands and titles were registered. And I guess this is where instances of corruption and the rest set in. However, a lot of order and efficiency was brought into the process by technology, and the exercise became more credible and attractive to end users. I want to take us through land registration innovation. From the initial experience of creation of land registry in Lagos State, almost all states have land registries. However, most of them still follow the analog and cumbersome land registration process. This is the reason why most of the country's massive land holdings of 768,000 square kilometers of land is not registered. And that is why we have less than 3% of this land registered and titled. To reverse the trend and create conducive environment for mass titling and registration of interest in land, the Presidential Technical Committee on Land Reform commissioned a study which revealed that the systematic land titling and registration is a better and more fruitful approach. This involved the titling and registration of all lands in a locality in a systematic manner. This eliminates conflicts arising from ownership claims, as every land/property owner stands on his own land and knows the boundary which the community and neighbors could vouch for, thereby reducing to the barest minimum disputes on land. In addition, the systematic land titling is fast, efficient, cost-effective, and very credible, though yet to attain the optimum and acceptable level. It should be noted that prior to the adoption of SLTRO, the United Kingdom Department for International Development, DFID, and Her Majesty's Registry carried out training programs aimed at harmonizing and standardizing land registries in Nigeria. Anchored by this ministry under the National Technical Development Forum, and by this ministry I mean the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, they exercise acquainted states with standard skills and operational modalities for optimal and registration practice. However, many states lack the finances to implement the recommended computerization and modernization of the land registries. As a result, the impact of this innovation were minimal, except for the development of staff capacities. Now I'm going to run through some of the challenges among many more others. Excuse me. The challenges of land registries in Nigeria. As important and beneficial as land, the title registration, let me take it again, sorry. As important and beneficial as land is, and the title registration to the economy and component states, it is still fraught with many challenges which has affected their performance and efficiency. These challenges include disputes and conflict over land ownership, high cost of registration which acts as a disincentive, slow analog and cumbersome process which takes time to be completed, lack of basic survey infrastructure and information for fast, inexpensive, and sustainable land and title registration, low level of investment in automation and modernization of most land registries by states, lack of public awareness of the benefits of title registration, unattractiveness of land registration to the property owners who only considers registration necessary when seeking for loan from the bank. Dispute over land hinders the registration of such properties. Litigation also stalls land registration until judgment is given. The registration process cannot commence. Absence of defined and clear land boundaries hinders the registration of such lands. As a way of proffering solution to some of these challenges, I also want to outline the way forward among many others. To achieve optimal land and title registration of lands in the country, the following are recommended as the way forward. Computerization and modernization of land registries to undertake digital processes. Investment by states in the land registration process infrastructure and human capital. Public awareness creation on the numerous benefits of land registration. Procurement and installation of continuous operating reference stations nationwide to provide national survey infrastructure, which will facilitate the broadcast of field data to the offices for early production of survey plans required for early systematic land registration process. Creation of conducive and attractive process that will reduce registration time and cost. Adoption of STLR approach. This will ensure registration of all land in a locality in a systematic, orderly, fast, rancor-free manner, thus enabling more lands to be entitled and registered. Bringing my presentation to a close, I want to conclude with these few comments of mine. That at the federal level, the ministry is currently working on the electronic certification of certificates of occupancy system, which will ensure seamless titling and registration of land. When fully operational, the land registry will no longer operate manually, as all of its operations, including payments, survey plans, charting, and registration will be digitized and run seamlessly. By this innovation at the federal level, I'm encouraging all states to adopt this system, which though has an initial huge capital outlay, will run inexpensively thereafter and make the process efficient, fast, and credible. This will provide a robust platform for the National Land Depository to come on stream and provide credible online platform for the conduct of searches and other allowable transactions from any part of the world. States should also know that an efficient and digitally operated registration process will attract more lands and titles for registration, thereby increasing revenue and attracting more investors. With this few presentation of mine, I want to again say a very big thank you to the institution for inviting me to this symposium and to make this little presentation of mine, and also to the president and members of this great institution and all that is present at this symposium. Thank you very much.
Wow, madam, that was wonderful. Thank you very much for your presentation. We are always proud of you, and we trust that when next we are called upon, you will answer our call. There are a few questions from the audience to you, madam. You made mention of efforts being made to digitize the land registry at the federal level. Somebody is asking, what is happening to federal land information system? Is it still operational?
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello? Yes, it's still operational.
Yes.
It's still operational. It's the infrastructure. the infrastructure basis for which this, on which this electronic CFO registration and processing process is going to take off. Is the basic infrastructure platform that we have to kickstart the process. So it's still very much alive.
Trust you. Thank you very much. Secondly, somebody wants to know about the rate of land being registered at the federal level. What effort are you making to increase the rate of registered land across Nigeria, most especially federal land?
Okay, right now we have made a proposal to management which will help us to reduce the time of processing titles and secondary transactions. And once that approval is given, I assure you that within 3 weeks, most processes would have been concluded and would have gotten to the registry for the final leg of processing. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful, Mrs. Great Jerica. You have done well for yourself and for the ministry. And we look forward to more of that in the future. We will now release you to answer your national assignment call. Thanks for being here and thanks for your time. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate the privilege. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bode Agoro, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
We are sorry for keeping you waiting. We understand that you are one of us and you always understand with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Mr. Shuai Olabode Agoro is a PAMSEC in Lands Bureau, Lagos State Government. He's an alumnus of Leeds Metropolitan University, United Kingdom, and Harvard University. He's a lawyer by profession. He's an honorary fellow of Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuer. He's a lover and promoter of our profession. In fact, under your watch, as the PAMSEC, we have witnessed increase in the employment of our members in the service of Lagos State Government. I want to say thank you for taking good care of our members, and we look forward to more of that in the next coming year. Thank you very much, Mr. Bode Agoro. It's our pleasure having you around this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bode, you are aware that Lagos State being the state with the highest population in Nigeria, with a land coverage of 999.6 square kilometers, out of the 923,768 square kilometers of our national coverage. With a population of over 20 million, we expect pressure and competition on land use. We are also aware the effort being made by Lagos State in taking the lead in evolving pragmatic land administration system and policy, which we want to commend you for. However, despite this laudable effort, there are challenges militating against effective land administration in Lagos. Sir, can you take us through how you are managing the bureaucracy of land administration in Lagos State? Thank you, Mr. Bode.
Thank you very much. Permit me, please. I want to first of all do some acknowledgements. I want to thank ESV Sir Chief Emma Okas Wike, FNIVS, the president of NAIVS, and the entire EXCO, especially ESV Jumbo Amayevo, the first VP, and ESV Victor Longe, the second VP, and ESV Dr. Bangola, the chairman of the very branch, and in fact, the entire institution for bestowing on me the privilege and honor of being awarded a honorary member of the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. Thank you very much for that. I also want to acknowledge Senator Gbenga Ashafa, who was once the Permanent Secretary Lands Bureau, and under whose tutelage enabled us to thrive and learn the rudiments of land administration in the service. I thank you, sir, for laying the foundation, for laying a great foundation. Thank you. I'll go to my presentation. So here we go. Land is the platform on which all human activities take place and remains pivotal to any meaningful development. Our continued existence and growth depends on availability of land for the much needed development. The important resource of the earth, which cannot be reproduced or depleted, but can be mismanaged. Once mismanaged, the whole economy is distorted and the social and economic fabric of the entire state disintegrates to the detriment of the society. Apart from its physical and direct importance to society and the state, land also remains to date the most viable and always sought after security for bank advances and a pillar in the development of effective and efficient commerce in the country. Thus, the way and manner that land is administered has a direct impact on the nation's economy and societal development. It is therefore imperative that the management of such a core resource is done in the most efficient and effective manner. Over time, successive governments
Kindly bear with us. Mr. Bode will soon come online. Mr. Bode?
Yes.
All right, you're welcome.
Should I start again? I don't know where I...
Mr. Bode, continue from slide 4.
Okay, from slide 4, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Over time, governments have had to build checks and controls around the procedure of land administration and titling to dispel the activities of fraudsters and imposters with the aim of eliminating their activity. Unfortunately, some of these checks and controls increases the processes and requirements for obtaining title, thereby creating bureaucracy and bottlenecks. In Lagos State, different administrations have made several attempts at minimizing bureaucracy and the procedure and requirements for obtaining titles and gaining access to land. I just want to reiterate that, having to put a lot of checks and balances in place to eliminate the activities of fraudsters is important. And unfortunately, it has added to the bureaucracy. So what are we doing about it? So on slide 5, managing and eliminating bureaucracy, the major reforms in Lagos State. The Electronic Document Management System, 2003. The reforms at the Lands Bureau started during the administration of His Excellency, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with the implementation of the Electronic Document Management System. That was what started everything. This project entailed the scanning of all the certificates of occupancy and other title documents at the land registry, so that essentially title searches and certified true copies could be done and obtained electronically instead of manual searches. Under this project, we scanned over 30 million pages of documents onto the EDMS. This project alone eliminated the arduous task of manual searches and the other related risks and manipulations. The distinguished Senator Lajibo Ngashafa was the PS Lands at that period, and he was in charge of the successful takeoff of this project. This project laid the foundation upon which all other reforms in Lagos State were based. Thank you, sir. Secondly, the second major reform, the Electronic Certificate of Occupancy project. We started in 2014. The decision to change the yellow paper certificate of occupancy occurred during the administration of His Excellency, Mr. Babatunde Raji Fashola, and it was born out of the need to curtail some identified risks, such as forgery, counterfeiting, cloning, and delay. In addition to these factors, it became essential to move in line with modern technology and to put in place progressive and seamless processes in order to improve service delivery. It is pertinent to note that the yellow paper COO had been in use and unchanged since the promulgation of the Land Use Act in 1978. What were the objectives of the COO? 1, ensuring that all state land certificate of occupancy in circulation are genuine and verifiable, having in place an automated and secure process for issuing state land certificate of occupancy. C, increase public and investor confidence by instilling integrity in the state's certificate of occupancy. D, encouraging a larger pool of registration of title, which can then be used as collateral and enhance economic growth and thereby give life to debt assets. Under this project, the governor can sign the certificate of occupancy from anywhere in the world that has internet connectivity. So the files don't go to him, they go electronically by email, and he can log on to the portal and sign the certificate of occupancy electronically from anywhere in the world. The current head of service, Mr. Hakim Ruokola, was the permanent secretary at that time and was in charge of the successful takeoff of this project. Thank you, sir. The other major reform designed to tackle and eliminate bureaucracy in land management is the Integrated Land Administration Automation System 2019. We are very, very, very excited about this important project. It will significantly transform the processing and procedures of obtaining title documents. It is the most salient and revolutionary project that has ever been embarked upon at the Land Bureau. We want to leverage on the work done by the past administrations and remodel land administration, as well as critical infrastructure and architecture. The governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, is extremely passionate about this project. The Integrated Land Administration Automation System by Thomson Reuters, now called Harris Computers, provides for a fully integrated end-to-end land administration platform for a sustainable and automated land administration environment. It will effectively reduce size of information that exists across LDAs and thereby streamline the entire workflow process. The Integrated Land Administration Automation System is a suite of technology models that can conduct rapid inventory of land right, automate and manage land records, and create and maintain integrated geographic data and accurately value a property. Some of the key considerations of these interventions are that it's workflow and transaction-centric, which allows for complete modernization and automation of land administration. The system will bring about content sharing, which enables different MDAs to work the same data sources. It will bring about data security, which eliminates unauthorized activity. It brings about reporting, which enables government officials to make better and smarter decisions. And it brings about geographic information system, which integrates with and use the existing investments, such as the GIS at the Office of the State Surveyor General. It further brings about record preservation, which is critical. Digitizing of paper records, which means that preservation and archiving of valuable historical records and documents. When the system is fully operational, it will eliminate the bureaucracy and all other processing issues associated with land administration in Lagos State. This intervention will significantly reduce the time frame for obtaining the different titles from initiation to completion. excuse me, it will multiply land transactions and optimize stroke increase revenue collection, while at the same time reducing the cost of transaction and solidifying credibility of land titles in the state. Currently, we are currently scanning and digitizing every single file used in processing title documents from inception, such as governor's consent files, allocation files, regularization files, excision files, revocation files, as well as all documents necessary that were involved in the process of registering any title. It is indeed a very massive and painstaking project, but it needs to be done. In a nutshell, the system will enable the public to apply for land allocations, governor's consent, regularization, COOs, title searches, certified true copies from the comfort of their home or office, anywhere in the world. All you need to do is log on to our portal. Every step in the process is done or will be done online, including payments, and you can even track your applications. So consequently, the applicant will not need to come to Lands Bureau for any reason whatsoever, except to collect his or her title documents. In addition, the system will also allow key officers to work remotely from anywhere. This is particularly useful given the current trend and the new normal. Like I said, currently it's only the governor that can work remotely on COOs. He can sign from anywhere in the world. So this new intervention will allow other key officers to be able to work remotely. The integrated land administration and automation system is envisaged to fully commence by the third or fourth quarter of 2021. I'll just run through a few other initiatives currently that are used to manage bureaucracy within the directorate. Most of them are manual. One, deployment of estate surveyors and valuers across all processing directorates in Lands Bureau. This is designed to achieve optimum performance. So land officers don't only stay in land services. We now deploy them across the professional directorates in land. And we have seen the increase in efficiency based on this. There's a creation of a new state land policy, state land allocation system, both for individual allocations and private developers, that ensures easy access to allocated land and prompt issuance of certificate of occupancy within 30 days of payment of loan charges. This is for current new allocations. This is doesn't relate to previous allocations. This is only from 2019 and above. Digital mapping of Lagos State, thereby facilitating prompt and efficient service delivery at the Office of the State Surveyor General. We also email demand notices to applicants for governor's consent. This enables the applicant to make payment faster without the need to come to Lands Bureau to collect the hard copy. We have a robust information pack website that also contains downloadable forms for any transaction you wish to conduct at Lands Bureau. The website also contains all the information you need on registration of property, including any renewal reform at the Lands Bureau. There's an encumbrance and litigation. Encumbrance and litigation on title can also be searched online under the List Spend This program. There's a hyperlink to it on our website. The List Spend This portal is an initiative of the Ministry of Justice and provides information and statistics on any land that is subject to litigation. This is very important because we don't want people buying land that is subject to litigation. Introduction of a new urban renewal policy that will create new towns out of old communities. This is being spearheaded by a sister agency, the New Towns Development Authority, who are doing a fantastic job. Implementation of the property protection law. This is a very key project. It is a law designed to tackle the menace of land grabbers. This law was passed in 2016. with prison sentences ranging from 2 years, 10 years, and 20 years imprisonment. There's a special task force that implements this law. The Honorable Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice is the chairman of the task force, while the Permanent Secretary Lands Bureau is the vice chairman. The coordinator of the special task force is based in the Ministry of Justice. So the Ministry of Justice is the one driving that project. That will be the end of my presentation. I thank you for the honor and for your attention. Thank you, sirs and ladies and ma'ams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bode Aguro. You've done so well in that wonderful presentation. Thank you, sir. And we have a question from one of the audience members. However, that question has been addressed in one of your slide presentations, slide 12, having made it known that title to start, the search title can be conducted online, so there is no need going back to that question. However, we want to know, despite the success of your integrated and automated land system in Lagos, are there threats to the integrated and automated land system in Lagos? Are there threats to this system?
Well, there's always a threat to any system or reform you want to place. If you adopt the mindset that there's no threat, then you are looking for trouble. So we are prepared. So the only threat we see is maybe from hackers who may want to hack into the system. You know, they can hack into any system. But we have like a 2 or 3 stage verification process, so which will make it very difficult for them to hack into. Even if they hack into, we have firewalls and other protective mechanisms that will not enable such to happen. And also, the other threat we may envisage is during the scanning process, whereby wrong information may be fed into the system. You can never, my own vision is that you should always be prepared. So having such things at the back of your mind enables us to put certain checks and balances in place to prevent such, which obviously I cannot discuss or disclose because it's our own secret.
Thank you very much, sir. We also want to commend the fact that you have existing laws and regulations in Lagos State to check the activities of land grabbers. I want to say thank you once again for that.
Thank you.
Having said that, we want to show our appreciation to you on behalf of the president, the first vice, the second vice. I want to thank you very profusely for finding time to be here and for taking good care of our members. And we look forward for your continued support. Thank you very much, Mr. Bode, and have a wonderful morning.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome. Thank you, sir.
Now we're taking Professor Mrs. M. Umiri. Professor Mrs. M. Umiri. Good morning, ma. Professor Mrs. Umiri. Good morning, ma.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's nice to meet you.
Nice seeing you again. Nice seeing you again. Thank you very much, ma. Very good morning to you. Professor M. Umiri is an estate surveyor and valuer. She's an alumnus of University of Reading and Cambridge University. She's the first female professor in Nigeria. That should deserve a round of applause from everybody. Thank you very much, ma. We are always proud to have you. She's the current head of Department Estate Management, University of Lagos. She is a mother, a grandmother who has produced many estate surveyors and valuers. Ma, yesterday we identified land as a key variable in housing development. We would love if you can take us through our national land use policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here, to be participating in this very, very important symposium. Marking the 60th anniversary of the institution. I mean, the institution has been grounded and had wonderful impact across the entire life of the nation. I'm very proud to be associated with this event, and I thank God for the opportunity. I also want to thank the institution for organizing this, the president, the first and second vice president, the organizers of this, including your good self, the fraternity, the moderator of this particular day presentation. Yesterday was very enlightening. I was very, very encouraged by many of the papers listened to and gained a lot of knowledge and insight also. And today has not been any less. It's been wonderful being here. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. Right, I'll be looking at the land use policy. Do we even have a national land use policy? One of the questions I'd like to address. We must draw a line between land policy in its wide form and land use policy that is commonly understood. I have to apologize that you don't have my slides. I've had some technical difficulty I've been having to grapple with since I came into my office this morning. But I will have the slides sent to the institution so whoever wants to have access to them later. Okay, so we shall be looking at the Nigeria's land use policy. I would like to first look at the concept. What's the importance and the rationale for this focus? And what is the land use policy compared to the land policy? And how important is this to our focus as an institution? We have been trying to see how to solve the issue of access to land for various forms of development, particularly housing. Yesterday was focusing mainly on the housing deficit and what should be done to get things to be improved. Now, in our discussion, I will be looking at the Nigerian Land Use Act. In what ways does it constitute a land use policy? Is it really a land use policy? And then what are the various other types of land use policies that exist? What can we do to make sure that national land use behavior, attitude, and activities are in line with our economic, our environmental, and investment aspirations? These are critical issues which, if we don't address, we continue to have problems of chaotic environment and so on and so forth. Particularly from the ethics of those perspectives, we want to look at the issue of investment in land, investment in housing, investment even beyond housing, commercial property, industrial property, even agricultural property, because there is a groundswell of interest in agriculture now, and a lot of people are going into that area. So back to my paper, as far as I put the things together. First, what is land use policy? We decide an official statement by government as regards its intentions and plans on how to order the use, the allocation of land resources, and how to ensure that land resources are conserved for future generations. And the European Union gave a definition that puts a kind of limitation on that, and a statement that does not have the force of law. But most countries put their land use policy into law so that it can be very entrenched and it can drive progress. Also, it's described as an embodiment of needs guiding principles and forces of action that focus on how land can be held, used, developed, and transformed by whom, under what conditions, for what purposes, and for how long. This gives us a clearer and a wider space of understanding of what land use policy should be. National land policy offers the framework for defining the role of land in the national economy and development through clarification of land ownership and distribution, the availability of land, utilization of land, its management and control. So national land policy, this is so many issues that have to do with land, the economy, business, and so on and so forth, including social welfare, including the management and administration of land. So the national land use policy.
Sorry, ma, Prof. Ma, can you hear me, ma?
Yes, I can hear you.
Please, can you adjust your mic so that we can hear you very loudly?
Okay.
Yes, please adjust your mic so that we can hear you clearly, ma.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me better now?
Better, ma. Fantastic.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. So I was trying to differentiate between the national land policy and the national land use policy. And I was saying that a national land policy addresses things on a broader perspective, from a broader perspective, talks about the role of land in the national economy and its role in development, its role in ensuring social welfare, and it sort of directs how land resources should be distributed, how it should be alienated, how it should be utilized, how it should be managed and controlled. Whereas the national land use policy usually focuses more on things that have to do with utilization of land. You might say, oh, that's putting it very, very simple. But yes, indeed, we need to have that clear understanding because for the most part, land use policies are subsumed under national land policy. So it's like an integral element of the national policy. Okay, so it has to do with determining optimal land utilization for sustainability and take account of locational issues, topographical differences, ecological characteristics, the demographic factors that need to be taken into consideration, and so into consideration, and so on and so forth. So indeed, there is a difference. We must not mix the two together. Okay. Why are we concerned with this? I want us to have a clear perspective because then I think it will make it easier to see where we're coming from and where we're going. Joseph Hammett several years back said that if you want to see how the land economy of a country is performing, you should look at the housing sector to evaluate it. If the housing sector is perfect, then the land policy, the land is working well. But beyond what he said, we have to look at things on a more holistic plane. How well does our land support our aspirations as a nation in terms of competitiveness, in terms of productivity, in terms of sustainability of jobs and opportunities, in terms of poverty alleviation, in terms of social balance, and so on and so forth. Beyond that, how well does the land use policy, now the land use policy, support the avoidance of wasteful uses of land? How well do land use policies ensure that those who need to invest in land get it in the right place and the right time in order to carry out, investments, development that satisfy the needs of society in a manner that, preserves health and at the same time satisfies all their desires. The time available is not enough to really do, adequately with all that we need to look at. But I'll just try and pinpoint key issues that we need to focus on so that we can, interrogate these key elements and make sure that as the body, recommendations are made to the higher authorities, to to ensure that this country gets better deals from its land resources. Okay, so we are looking at this issue because of the world our population keeps increasing, urbanization continues to increase at a fantastic pace. In fact, Nigeria is flagged as the most urbanizing nation in Africa and perhaps in most of the developing world. Also, we have a lot of resources which, if not properly exploited, might be preyed upon by foreign interests, which we need to really ensure are conserved for future generations, while those who are there now are not suffering from disease. Then there are nascent technological improvements that we can take advantage of. For instance, in the area of IT, so many new things are coming up that are making land administration much more effective. I'm going to see how this thing can be built into land use. And land use policy is a good way. It is to what extent are we technologically enabled to pursue efficiency in the use of our land resources. Beyond that, there is need for reform in all the areas that are inimical to progress. In terms of critical land uses, there are things being done that are not helping us to ensure that land gets into the hands of those who can develop it for the betterment of everybody. Then we need to address these things and get them out of the way. Also, I must say this, that there is need to curb excesses of land stakeholders who are, exercising value to the detriment of other people. There are people being displaced. Whole communities being displaced because of insurgency. There is inadequate appreciation of the land use implications and what this can have, the effect this can have on our economy as a whole. You might say that here at Office of Wealth and Value, our principal focus will be on individual corporate agencies, capital, profit. Yes, but if we don't pay attention to all those issues, which we want to be kind of very there, we might be like failing to ensure that what we focus on, what we and so on and so forth, are sustained over the long term and also ensured to be distributionally balanced. Okay, so land use policies have a number of goals. Now we have looked at those goals, we can use that framework to test whether our land use act is actually a land use policy or not. First, land use policies in a broad way look at resource development and mobilization. Land to be developed, to be mobilized for the satisfaction of the social needs. Land use policies look at economic productivity and efficiency. If a person who does not have capital is holding land and is not able to develop the land, then society is not going to benefit from what the development of that land would have spent. So it means when we are pursuing efficiency, we must be careful to fix this and make sure that while looking at equity, we are not compromising efficiency. Okay? Then apart from that, there's the need for environmental protection. There's the need to make sure that national aspirations on the long run are not compromised. There's the need to ensure that we prevent and resolve conflict, and also to make sure that there is protection of national identity and our cultural heritage. Okay. When our colleague was talking about land grabbing, I have expected that there might be some mention of the fact that there are a lot of foreign interests looking into Nigeria and trying to take over land interests as much as possible. We need to be careful to make sure that we protect those interests. Now, looking at land use policies, where do land use policies come from? What do they really do? Land use policies determine who may hold land, who may develop or use it for various purposes and at what, under what conditions. Okay, they also rationalize assets the use and exploitation of rights to land, to make sure that you have the judicial use of the resources. Then we look for optimization. Optimization is a critical thing. We don't look for efficiency at the cost of, making sure that things last as long as possible. Then we want to make sure that we have all our regional and local communities adequately catered for. Right. Now, let us ask ourselves this question. Do we have a national land use policy? Is the Land Use Act a land use policy? We look for things like food security, we look for things like infrastructure provision, we look for poverty alleviation, we look for so many things that are necessary when you are trying to engage land in uses that will benefit society on the long run. To what extent does the Land Use Act focus on all these aspects? I want to take us through key aspects of the Land Use Act. What does the Land Use Act say? The focus of the Land Use Act, objectives to unify the land use system, the land tenure systems in the country, to ensure that government as well as individuals have access to land to carry out their various operations, and also to put forward a pathway for the management of land in the country. There are historical factors leading to the genesis of the Land Use Act. But let us look at what is packed in its content that we can, attach to land use, so that we can see where it fails to be a land use policy in that sense of the word. Now, we have sections 1 and 2 dealing with the vesting of land in state government, 3 and 7, the designation of urban and rural areas. That can be in a way related to land use. Then, section 5 and 6, 11 to 12, dealing with powers of the governor and local government in relation to land matters, the right of occupancy, this was set out in section 9, 36.7, then the issue of government powers regarding rent, the prohibition of alienation without government consent, the revocation and the compensation issues in section 30 to 33, and so on and so forth. If we look at this aspect critically, we see that emphasis is on classification of types of land rights that are recognizable, who should manage land, who should have the ultimate control over land in this case, and then what can you do with your rights of occupancy, and then when land is acquired, how should you be compensated, and so on and so forth. Clamor for changes in the Land Use Act have been occurring even since its inception in 1978. And so now this will keep coming up because there are huge, should I say, shortfalls in what the Land Use Act says and what it is expected to be, particularly in the southern part of the country. While the northern part is happy with this because it's like a continuation of what used to exist, is their part. The southern is not, because there are so many other things that we need to deal with that are not adequately dealt with. But be that as it may, in what way does the Land Use Act fail to be a land use policy? It does not clarify how land should be treated in terms of, those key characteristics with regard to topography, with regard to what each area is good for, and so on and so forth. Although some of the sections which mention of uses, of one type or the other, and in the state, in trying to put the sections of the Land Use Act into what they can enforce in their state. They have tried to define residential from commercial and so on and so forth. The point is that the Land Use Act is like an umbrella policy, a land policy enunciating. but not adequately clarified its use aspect. Okay, so what are the land use policies we can say we have? I would like to put emphasis here on our planning laws. Our town planning laws say more about direct issues affecting land use. There are things said about, what do we say now, residential, commercial, industrial. There are efforts to differentiate between how land should be treated under the various land uses, and also the law under company guides it as regards, how land should be channeled into these various uses. And we find that in many states, what has been done has been to try and step down the land use and step down the town planning law into what they can easily administer or implement in their state environment. For instance, in Lagos State, we have the Lagos State Land Policy of the new era that came out as far back as 1980. There, they specified how many plots of land will be produced each year for different uses and how they will be allocated and so on and so forth. The land use mapped because land use, the Lagos State even knows as far as having a master plan, and there were so many other things done in order to ensure that this is happen. Land use policies also are reflected in zoning regulations, master plans, town and country planning edits. Also, you have development control instruments, you have development guidelines, and so on and so forth. For instance, in Lagos State, in 1988, you had a land development guideline for, development of government land by private developers. These are, aspects of land use policy, or being created by state to direct how government land will be developed, and so on and so forth. So, like I said earlier, time is not very much on our side, but we now want to evaluate, because I'm supposed to get a critical look at this land use policy. Now, let us evaluate how good, how useful this land use policies are. I'm taking the land use act and talking also about the farm and country farming here. We could use different frameworks to assess. One of them is the land governance framework, which enunciates the use of certain criteria for judging whether a land policy is working well or not. We take the United Nations framework, which talks about equity, subsidiarity, sustainability, transparency, civic integration, security, and so on. If we look at each of these compartments of a performance that we're supposed to use to evaluate, you can see that our land use policies do not always perform well from the point of view of the key elements that we're supposed to use in judging them. For instance, when it comes to equity, I must say that to a large extent, by implementation, many of our land policies have been more elitist than necessary. The common man does not even know what is available to him, talk less of knowing which are expecting. And when they are trying to access, it's like the way the regulations are, the way they are implemented, along their path. Then even from the corporate perspective, because in the class I teach on land for housing, we find that a lot of those who come to the professional master's program have had one experience or the other with regards to trying to get land in large quantities to be able to pursue their housing investment agenda. And what usually happens is that they hardly ever get allocation when they apply, unless they know somebody, unless they can, use the influence of someone or the other to be able to get an allocation. When you do get an allocation, apart from the cost of securing that land, you still have to go and pay the local community, which means that in taking control of land resources, the government structure has not adequately been able to use the Land Use Act to actually take over the undeveloped sites for purposes of ensuring their development. Not just that, we find that when it comes to equity, the allocation of land resources is still not as it should be. We find that people are discriminated against. Most women in the process usually fall out because they cannot meet up with many of the requirements based on their task. Some do get through, but usually at high cost and after a lot of waste of time. So the event of, on the long run, most of those who seek land for use end up having to rely on the informal structure, the informal market, which is to a large extent fraught with all kinds of difficulties. The uncertainty of what you are buying, because many of the times we see, selling land in the informal market without necessary papers. We are grateful to God and to the PPCLR for what they are doing now with the SLCR. I hope that the process can be speeded up and that various parts of the country can benefit extensively as quickly as possible. Then when it comes to the issue of legality and conformity to rule of law as one of the criteria for judging, the law states what needs to be done. The policy, the Land Use Act, states with respect to the sections we mentioned, what is expected. But when it comes to implementation, the difficulties experienced by investors are huge. Like my president said at the beginning, he said the Land Use Act has become an impediment. And indeed, this is an experience many people voice out. A lot of projects cannot take off. When they take off, they become much more expensive than necessary. Some are abandoned, and no wonder the housing deficit continues to grow rather than diminish. Not just that, under the framework I was talking about, there's supposed to be inclusiveness, or what we call ensuring that members of the public are carried along, in decision making. When it comes to land use policies, this doesn't happen in this country for the most part. In some instances, hardly in many states, but in some instances, we have consultations with local communities to get their preferences, get them to get a buy-in to the project. I can say with some confidence that I personally saw some of these being put in place in Mina, in Niger State, while interacting with Professor Mugi on a project that we carried out sometime in 2012, 2015, under the aegis of the Adam Smith Institute for land bankers. We visited there and we were able to see that there were instances where, yes, the community was carried along, preferences were, their preferences were gotten and things were handled accordingly. But then, those were for specific projects. It wasn't something that was built into a policy that would be a long-standing thing. And we really need a thing like that in this country. Now, apart from that, when it comes to efficiency, how efficient is our land use policy if we do have one? Efficiency requires that we achieve our goals at minimum cost, and also that we achieve the goals within good time so that the benefits can be optimized. What we see is that land uses, it's a big combination of several problems. We have government agencies that have to change in terms of competition, who is ahead, who is there, and all that, as governments change. Governments do change frequently in this country compared to other countries. By the time an election takes place and a new party is taking over, all the officers are changed, priorities are yielded, many projects are abandoned, and so on and so forth. This is a huge risk of land resource because those lands that have already been engaged, channeled in certain uses, are now left, uncompleted. The capital invested is, drowned they are participating. Then another critical issue I have with regard to this is that in many of our cities, and I'm sure you all can identify with this, in many of our cities, and even in rural areas, we notice that the plans are prepared. By the way, plans are also key of land policy, and critical plans, development keys are instruments for enforcing land use policy. But when these things are prepared, a government may have a certain plan and begin to allocate land accordingly. By the time they change of government occurs, the new government comes in, there's a new idea altogether. So there might be several layers of intended uses, allocations, and so on, things that eventually breed conflict, breed disputes, and delay development, delay use, and delay the benefits that should ensue from these land uses. My time is not much, so I have to be very fast.
Yes, your time is really running fast. You have exceeded the 20 minutes. So we appreciate if you can help us to round up. Thank you, ma'am.
To round up now.
I'm sorry about that.
So with regards to accountability, yesterday, Professor Nubi pointed out the issue of endemic corruption in the system. That is also a plaguing land use issue. There's a lack of transparency because data is lacking. Everything is okay. People don't get to know exactly where development is required. And so the criticisms are many. Our plans are elitist. They are reactive in the sense that things get out of hand before we start looking at remediation. And so many times, informal settlements that have really messed up how land could be channeled out properly are not remediated. They are just like that, effective and end. And many of the times they're actually cleared off in the interest of new developments that are aimed more at elite. I'm sorry for this, but let me quickly rush. Then we have the issue of poor dissemination of our land use policies. They are non-inclusive. They don't carry the population along. And then, usually they create more problems than they are supposed to solve. So we need a situation in which we have adequate consideration of all these long-term and immediate effects of land use plans and land policy before we start putting them into action. Okay, our present type of land rights that are recognized under the land use and do not adequately make room for other kinds of land rights that could push development. I will close on this note. In our cities, we need to embrace the issue of a compact city approach to development so that we minimize some of the problems that come out of corporates providing infrastructure, solutions, and so on and so forth. There's a whole concept of making sure that we have compact communities where people can go to work without necessarily having to board the bus and things like that. This requires a whole reform of our approach to planning, our approach to land use rationalization within cities. So the rural areas, we need to give adequate attention. So we need to conserve agricultural land, arable land, so as to be able to ensure we have food security. I've said so much, but it seems all not so much as properly put together as I would have liked to do. But thank you very much for the opportunity to express my thoughts on this matter. And I hope, as questions come up, I have opportunity to clarify further aspects that I may not have touched upon. Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you very much for the applause.
Thank you very much, our distinguished professor. Deserve a round of applause. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. Of course, Mommy, we will not blame you because the topic reads a critical look. So you are trying to give it a critical assessment. We appreciate if you can find time to send us the full paper that we can send to all our members to further, yes, sharing your wealth of experience. And there are two questions, but one has been dealt with in the course of your presentation that has to do with the equitable distribution of land resources. So there is no need going into that. The second question from our decks here is, are there specific rules of estate surveyors and valuer in land use policy administration in Nigeria? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. That's a very important question. There are very important rules that land estate surveyors and valuers take. Apart from paying an advisory role, advocacy makes a lot of sense. There are issues that will require one thing I've always enjoyed in our institution is that we tend to respond to issues as they come up. When things are flagged up, you can bet that nice to have a position, nice to say something. So we need to carry that a step further and be more proactive. Who says that estate surveyors and valuers cannot, in conjunction with the planning agencies, point at where population is going, point at where investment is going, and influence the creation of new schemes, the creation of new towns and things like that. I think we should take the lead there. And not just in terms of pointing out, but also in demonstrating. Of course, we have to go about things in a legal way. We have to obtain permissions and so on and so forth. But I want to look at a situation in which estate surveyors and valuers will demonstrate their what do I call it now, their expertise and their sensitivity to the long-term needs of communities by being the ones to actually initiate projects. I know it's not easy, we don't always have the capital, but we have the expertise, and expertise is something that money cannot buy. People are seeking for advice. That's why they go and build in one places, and by the time they bring it to you to manage, it's already a problem. You start managing a problem. Why not direct investors in such a manner that before they become problems, the advantages are already made clear for all to see. So two things are saying. One, be in the forefront of pointing out what is best to do, like this forum is trying to achieve. Number two, demonstrate expertise by being the ones to undertake projects, being the ones to demonstrate to the world how best to do this thing. I think we can do it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Professor Mrs. Muduke Omirin, the grandmother of estate surveying and valuation in Nigeria. On behalf of the president, the first vice, and the second vice, I want to say thank you. And the president requested me to thank you specifically for all your effort in supporting the cause of our education, especially using really like for one of our centers in the course of our exam. We encourage that we enjoy more of that support. Thank you very much, Ma, and it's a pleasure having you around this afternoon. Pray that God Almighty will renew your strength. Thanks for coming online, and God bless you. Bye.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor.
You're welcome. Professor Mohammed Bashanu, are you around? Good morning, sir, Professor.
Yeah, good morning, the moderator and every other one. Can you hear me very well?
Sure, we can. While we await the arrival of Professor Aluku, we want to take Professor Mohammed Basha Nu. I will just introduce him briefly because his profile is up to 20 pages, and you should just bear with me. He's a professor of estate management and valuation, currently the director, Center for Human Settlement and Urban Development, Federal University of Technology, Mina. He's an alumnus of Federal University of Technology, Mina, one-time head of department, and I took over from him. One-time chairman at Niger State, I took over from him again. I hope that when he's leaving the director office, I will also take over from him. Yes. He was one time the chairman education committee national for our institution, and under his watch as the chairman, he introduced the online registration of our examination by our candidate. He's widely traveled. He has traveled almost every part of the world, apart from Afghanistan. Prof, it's nice having you here this very afternoon, and he's a professor with a specialty in land administration. Prof, talking about the Land Use Act, there have been a lot of issues surrounding the Land Use Act that have been raised. Issues like securing title to land is difficult. The compensation provision as contained in section 28 and 29 inadequate, and some people are of the opinion that the composition of the two committees, that is to say, the Land Use Allocation Committee for the urban land and the Land Allocation Advisory Committee for the rural land, is inadequate. However, there are other schools of thought who believe that if we can implement the Land Use Act as it is adequate for our sustainable land development. As a professor of estate management and valuation with specialty in land administration, and also as a member of the royal family, the Shetima of Mina, do you think there is need for the amendment of the Land Use Act of 1978, Prof. Sir?
Well, can you allow me to share my few slides so that I will address your questions adequately, and then while the attendees and participants follow.
Fine, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Just a minute, I'm trying to...
No problem, we're with you, sir.
Oh, I've earlier sent the paper there because I can't find it there. If you can share it from your end. I've sent the paper earlier on to the first vice. Let me start by actually thanking the president of the institution and particularly the first vice. Particularly the first vice and other distinguished panelists. Because of wanting of time, I will just go straight to the presentation. Like you rightly pointed out, Land Use Act 1979, a need for amendment. It is very relevant, but the justification is stemmed from the following, which is actually issues to do with the land disputes, land grabbings, land encroachment. Well, of course, our Center of Human Settlement and Urban Development in Mina has been into various research, trying to see how we can contribute in this respect. So if the person, yes, so actually, next slide, please. Let him just be following me. Yes, I will just be speaking with the slide. The presentation is actually there. We looked at briefly the rationale for the title, which is the promulgation of the Land Use Act in 1979. We also look at the need for the amendments and then few conclusions. Next, please. You will agree with me that it's no longer news that the Land Use Act of 1978 was promulgated simply because to do good to social and economic reasons to all Nigerians in terms of land acquisition for development by government and individuals, and also to check activities of land speculators who without any make thousands of nairas only on the ability to manipulate and take undue advantage of land in land matters. That is also to eradicate for good the situations in which few families and individuals monopolize available land, while the masses are denied access to the God-given asset, land. Sincerely, these were lofty ideas that the Land Use Act was promulgated to address, and also to minimize the incessant rancors and litigations. Despite, you agree with me that despite all these lofty objectives, the Land Use Act customary norms relating land tenure prevails in Nigeria as at today. The ownership and use of land is generally assigned to communities, and administration of the land by village leaders is intended for the benefit of the community. Particularly in the north of Nigeria, customary law and Sharia law relating land tenure have been somehow merged to create what we call a new type of hybrid system. Of course, the Nigerian Constitution gives all citizens the right to acquire and own immovable property. The Constitution also incorporates the provision included in the Land Use Act of 1979. So by extension, you will agree with me that the Land Use Act is already a document of the Constitution. The creation of a system of occupancy certificates, the provision of Section 2 of the Act, which empowers the governor to constitute the Land Use and Allocation Committee for Urban Land, and the local government chairman to constitute local land allocation advisory committee for non-urban land areas. In most states of the Federation, as I speak today, has no these committees in place. And I was happy when the PAs of Rivers State alluded to these singular reasons, and that accounted for double allocations, accounted for maladministrations in land administration, because it makes the governor to be an ombudsman, because nobody is advising him on what constituted, because the composition of the Land Use and Allocation Committee is specified by the law, which is not adhered to. So ab initio, you agree that the Land Use Act is not even fully implemented and not recognized by most of the states that we have in this current dispensation. Similarly, Section 51 of the Act, which defines customary right of occupancy to mean the right of person or community lawfully using or occupying in accordance with customary law, and include a customary right of occupancy granted by a local government under this Act. So all this goes to show a kind of inconsistency, which makes the necessity, the rationale for the amendment of this Act. Apart from these sections, another 16 cases in support of the proposition that the Act recognizes and allowed the application of customary land tenure system legion. Land Use Act, possessory rights to land leads to uncertainties as contained in 2 clauses of the Land Use Act, and is in conflict with Section 1, subsection 3 of the FCT Act. The 2 clauses of the Land Use Act are contained in Section 34, subsection 2, and 36, subsection 2. The former relate to land in urban areas and states that where land is developed, the land shall continue to be held by the person in whom it was vested immediately before the commencement of the Act, as if the person or the holder of the land was the holder of statutory right of occupancy issued by the governor under this Act. So meaning, ab initio, the Act also recognizes this custom, those who are in actual possession that predates the Act. So, and this creates a lot of lacuna. And similarly, in respect of the vast majority of the landowners living in rural areas, Section 36, subsection 2 states as follows. Any occupier or holder of such land, whether under customary rights or otherwise, however, shall, if that land was on the commencement of this act, be used for agricultural purposes, continue to be entitled to possessory of the land for use for agricultural purposes, as if a customary right of occupancy have been granted to the occupier or holder thereof by the appropriate local government, and the reference in this subsection to land being used for the agricultural purposes includes land which is in accordance with the customary of the locality concerned, allowed to lie fallow for purposes of recuperation of the soil. So these are all the lacunas that we're talking about. Already, it means this account for the reason why we have less percentage of people that have registered land titles in Nigeria, because already they are assumed to be registered titles. I was asking the question earlier on when the Federal Director of Lands was doing her presentation. That figure seems to have been static. You know, we need to get adequate data to move forward, because when you keep saying 3% of Nigerian land space that is only tied to title or certificate of occupancy, at what point? Because already the Land Use Act recognizes these dim grants, recognizes all this, that, and they said as if they are holder of this certificate. Are we also counting them? Do you have the statistics of them? Do you have the data to really justify and account them in? Because this is a point of law and this is a constitutional issue which we need to move forward. So to reinforce the necessity to propose amendments, therefore, the suggestion is in 4 parts as follows. Part A of the Act, of course, needs to remove the Act from the Constitution. We cannot do anything if this Act remains in the Constitution. Therefore, we are strongly joining forces to advocate that this Act must be taken out of the Constitution of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria for us to be able to do justice to the amendment. And that's the first and most important thing that we have to do, because when anything is in the Constitution, it is laborious to amend, it is Herculean, it is difficult. All the 36 states must concur to all these things. And we know the kind of polity we operate in Nigeria today. And it is virtually impossible. And that's why this act have lasted this long, for about 42 years. And we have not really seen the desired result. Number 2, part 2, is the consent and title issue, which we'll discuss further. And then also the compensation issue, which is contained at the part 3. And then part 4, the other issues. Well, of course, like I said earlier on, the most important single amendment which we have to join forces to ensure that it comes into friction is the removal of the act from the Constitution. This has been advocated by even all various kinds of professional bodies, interest groups. And if the act remains in the Constitution, amendment is very laborious. The cost implication of any such amendments is highly huge, because for you to go and take referendum in various states of the federations to move around, it becomes a cost difficult. Look at those specific aspects that the National Assembly is currently going on in the review of the Constitution. We all know what they presented in the budget. And this is a whole challenge. The only time we have had close attention to amendment of this act was during the late President Yar'Adua's era, which it features in the land features in the 7-point agenda of his government. And since then, every other thing has gone into limbo. I'm sure many bureaucrats and technocrats that spoke earlier on were just being nice and diplomatic because they were economical with the fact there is no serious attention given to this sector, which of course must, as a professional body, which is an advocacy group, is also a kind of a pressure group, we have to come up and say the reality. We need all attention to be given. I wish the National Assembly have taken along those sections of taking out this out of the Constitution that will help us to reduce a lot of costs and issues today. The Land Use Act is only working document on land administration today in this country, which is subject to review from time to time, based on the exigencies of time, based on the prevalent circumstances. It is therefore an abnormal for such a document to remain in the Constitution. Of course, The next slide talks about various reasons why we should do that. Effort that has been made, the National Assembly in ensuring that this is taken out of the Constitution. And of course, majority of Nigerians, especially the professional groups, demand that it should be removed from the Constitution. All the commissions, committees, many other bodies set up by government have recommended that it should be so. The Law Reform Commission, which was charged in the late 80s to review the act, so recommended. The Presidential Committee on Urban Development and Housing, and so on and so on. There are so many people that have gone to justify these things. Now, to be specific in part 2, in terms of the consent issue, if you look at sections 21, 22, and 23, it's clearly there. It prohibits alienation of a customary right or statutory right of occupancy, as well as sublease of a statutory right without consent or approval. The power of consent of the governor is required. So a governor that have granted CO4 to a developer, now you want to obtain the facility from the bank. You also have to go back for consent. This is the retarding development. And of course, this has affected investment in land. And that's why many, bureaucracy has been created in this respect. Also in section 21, where a customary right of occupancy is to be sold by or under the order of the court, any court, a sheriff or civil processing law has to be initiated. The same thing is section 22, subsection 1, where a holder of a statutory right of occupancy granted by the governor seeks to alienate his right or any part thereof, also must obtain the consent. So these are they delay the secondary transactions, which slow down huge capital investment that should have gone into all these sectors, because the governor is a busy person and a lot of things that is affected. Now, and this negates all the outcry of the World Bank, into multinational bodies, respecting the land rights and averting land dispute, and so many other actions that has been noted across the bank. If you deal in land, there are so many issues that will come. So that's why we need all to stop this land, secrecy, bureaucracy, corruption, and so many things to boost in a lot of investment in these sectors. And then also in our city development, rural development, and then the crises that are associated, which you can see in the picture in the next slide, which provides clear sense of the chaos you notice in the city, where the rural areas is left undeveloped. In the lower picture there, you can see how less developed most of this is a typical nature of most of our rural, lands in the rural settings, because there is no development, there is no infrastructure, there is no massive injection of use of land for commercial activities, for investment purposes. All you see thereafter, for those who use for agricultural purposes, you see people with machetes killing themselves because of ambiguity this law have created. Even where you assume that a lot of acquisition has been done, and somebody feels, the Land Use Act has recognized his right as if he's a holder of CO4. Now you revoke it, it comes and start fighting a lot of crises. So we must stop these things, and that's why we're saying the rationale for the removal of the consent provisions of the Act are as follows. The process of obtaining consent is cumbersome. In terms of costs, consent fees in some respects are excessive and arbitrary, costing as much as 15% of the assessed value as in some states, and requiring up to 3 months or more to perfect the document. All these add up to the cost of doing business in Nigeria. Consent has been used as a political tool, bringing hardship to a good number of Nigerians. The overall tidiness and cumbersomeness discourage credit flow from banks and other financial institutions to investment sector. Presently under the Act, which the holder of the certificate of occupancy has, is a right of occupation, not ownership. These are issues that the amendments will be tailored towards addressing. People seem to use interchangeable occupation and ownership. There are two distinctive things that we must address. There is an uncertainty of tenure with respect to rights acquired before the commencement of the act, including deemed rights. You know, there is a plethora of documents flying all over the places. Some places you hear the land certificates in some part of Lagos State, deeds of conveyance, deeds of assignment, certificate of occupancy, power of attorney, deed of sublease, this etc. This is so because of the indefiniteness of the transition period provided in the Act. So we must, you know, be committed to ensure that these lacunas are addressed. The uncertainty is slowing down the economy because land is everything, it's a resource, and we can use it. And in terms of the compensation part, which is provided in part 3, so section 29 in particular, by far this is a single provision that has caused the most discontent amongst the population since the promulgation of the Act in March 1978. The defense under these sections can be seen listed as follows. It recognizes the occupier as against the holder of the right of occupancy in payment of compensation. It limits the compensation payment for land on the ground rent paid during the year of revocation. The section does not conform to the doctrine of adequate compensation as envisaged by the Nigerian Constitution. It does not recognize the interest of other parties other than the holder who may have paid the market value for the property prior to the government acquisition. These are issues that is rarely justifying amendment of this Act. Whereas in England, of course, they are our colonial masters, the law recognizes the right of elsewhere owner to compensation for land taking, meaning the land has, you know, compensation value, unlike what is practiced in Nigeria. Land injuriously affected and disturbance among others. So many other issues are brought into it. Even what the consequences as a result of such as, and that's why what you witness herein is chaos. A lot of issues you see, just like Peter robbing Paul to pay Peter. And by private, I'm happy most of the directors have addressed the issue to do with land and lead to land disputes because they are not transparently done. And that's why you see even grazing areas with crises between health, cattle rearers, farmers and things, because things are not clearly defined. We must have an act that defines clearly what are those things. So from the previous studies we have conducted, even at the center, we come to realize that there are almost about 15% as a result of this act that of the totality of the land conflicts. We have serious land conflicts which account for almost about 24.10% that are all in the various causes. About 55.5% are also considerable land conflicts. These are graphs of existing land conflicts as a result of the Land Use Act, because you discover that some people are so changed. There are no clear definition of certain aspects. So that's why we must support this move to really amend this act for us to. There's really a need. An act that has been in place for 42 years can never serve all the relevance of time. And you will agree with me, Professor Omeri just alluded to the fact that even some policies, you have to, on the ground, people use their wisdom to solve issues, not defined in the policy. This is a contradiction. We must ensure that we have a land policy that is holistic, comprising, and then can be used to address issues clearly on the ground. By way of recommendations, specifically Section 23, subsection 1 should be amended as follows by deleting the phrase with the prior consent of the governor and coming after with the word with right of occupancy may in the first line of subsection 23, subsection 1 and section 23 should also be repealed. And then, of course, there should be comprehensive registration of titles and instruments affecting land rights on land, because we need data. We need information. Even those that are, so to speak, saying that they are assumed to be holders of certificate of occupancy, we should capture them. We should have a mechanism. We have technology. We have so many means. There should be incentives to attract them to come forward and register, even if not for purposes of taxation, for purposes of even identifying, for purposes of data, for us to have a comprehensive registration of titles so that we know who owns what and where, what is the contour of ownership in this country. And all deemed rights should be registered forthwith. That's what we're advocating. In registration, the ultimate should be land or title registration. With Nigeria having 2 satellites in the space and the generating satellite imageries, we already have a facility to generate the required infrastructure to achieve this within a reasonable time. So what's the essence of having this satellite in space? There is the need to register all documents, deeds and instruments relating to subsequent transactions without necessarily creating delay and what have you, so that we can really move forward to see that we are doing things the way others are doing in developing countries. We shouldn't just be looking at ourselves backward. Arising from my experiences, studies, and interactions, engagement with the relevant stakeholders, the following specific recommendations are also adopted here. Section 29, subsection 1, the last 3 words, their unexhausted improvement should be deleted, replaced with at the prevailing market value. It should be definite. You know, section 29, subsection 4 should be amended as follows: the land for an amount equal to the market value. Section 29, subsection 5, to start after the words part of the larger area in line with 2 above. The holder of the statutory right of occupancy should be entitled to compensation for injurious affections and disturbance arising from the part revocation of their holdings, and any interest payable shall be assessed and computed in the like manner. This should be very clear, you know, so that we don't have lacunas. To ensure the operation of the free market economy, the provisions of the Land Use Act, which require the consent of the governor or local government authority for dealing in land, should be repealed. Approval, however, of the holder of the statutory right to alienation of a sublease be retained. In places of consent, the stamping and registration of instrument advancing transaction should be provided for. In further to all these things, we need to amend the Land Use Act to be in consonance with SDG goals. You know, goal 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 5, 11, and 15 are specific that address land issues. Because when you look at target 1.4, it talks about tenant insecurity, security. If you look at 2.3, it addresses smallholders, farmers. Target 2.4 addresses agricultural area. Target 5 also securing women's agricultural land, and the legal framework is securing women's land, and urban informalities, which is addressed by target 11. Of course, open spaces, land consumptions, and then 15.1 target also addresses forest area, biodiversity, land degradation, and destruction. So these are necessity for this amendment, and a lot more of these can be found in my inaugural lecture, which talked about land safety, how secured, and it's available for everybody that need it to really see more of this justification. In conclusion, conflict abound everywhere over vast areas of productive lands, and no geopolitical zone of Nigerian space is spared. Everywhere has this conflict. Consequently, many Nigerians wallow in abject poverty while our productive land remains idle. This is very sad. Therefore, the need to overhaul and amend the Land Use Act cannot be overemphasized to protect vulnerable groups against the vultures of local land grabbing and maladministrators. Entrenchment of transparency in negotiation involving land dealings be the nucleus of the new Land Use Act or the amendment. The amendment should be made to discourage corrupt practices by government officials, community leaders, and influential individuals, and make land an investment object. Nigerians will then be able to use their ingenuity to invest, produce, eliminate poverty, and create wealth for themselves and the country. Will also develop rapidly. All forms of insecurity will then vanish, and the country will experience lasting peace. To this end, a land matters and valuation coordination office at national and state levels in the country be established. So therefore, I end up by saying, amend Land Use Act to transform Nigeria. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity given to me to address this August symposium. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Bashanu, the leading professor in Northern Nigeria, one-time commissioner with Niger State government, for doing justice to this all-important topic. We're always proud of you and we love you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Just 2 questions from the participants to you. Deemed title holder should be registered. How will this be achieved? Did you get that, sir?
Yes, I did. I do.
The second one, do you think the government will be able to afford the financial implication of compensation if compensation is to be done adequately? These are the 2 questions.
Thank you very much. It is not difficult to get all the deemed grants holders registered. Like I said, we have satellite imageries already in space. You see, even if you use Google, you can spam to know if you know an ancient town that existed before the Land Use Act. You will be able to identify your properties. You will identify so many holders. All you need to do is print out these images, move to the field, and then get the real owner's name in presence of their neighbors. And that's not new. A lot of countries have fast-tracked this holistic approach of land titling, and then making it known clearly that they are not losing their rights to government or something. But there is no country that moves forward without adequate data. So this data can be acquired through the field survey using the satellite imageries, because the moment you are able to download all these areas, and within an ancient town, because they had some element of planning even before now, and you can be able to identify properties. Every owner of such property can even identify his own property within a georeference, data that is printed. Secondly, if we, check the excesses of corruption, every day you hear billions of naira stolen, dollars, this, channel it, because the only way to grow is to ensure that we invest massively in our land titling. Because this, if you know, there's nobody that can be poor once you have a town, you have a land that is registered. Even government with all this COVID-19 thing will have used holders of land title to send palliative to them. It's easy. It's just the political will. The moment we're able to agree to cut the excesses of governance, to cut the excesses of corruption, the other leakages, block them, channel the resources properly, it is doable, it is achievable, and it is not complex.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohammed Bashanu, for your time. The President expresses his appreciation to you. You call it the first vice, and the President requested me to specifically thank you for your good work to the institution, especially the Naif Learning Center. Thank you for having you online. Thank you
very much.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
On a lighter note, Professor Nuhu, I found out that Professor Kimiki is taking after you. You were Niger State branch, you handed over to him. You were chairman of education, you handed over to him. You were a commissioner, you refused to hand over to him. Now that he has presented a powerful paper, I hope you are going to hand over to him too.
He's my younger brother.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. And I will need your paper because we are going to a TV program tomorrow, Kakaki on AIT. And I know that one of the questions they will ask us is about the Land Use Act. So we need your paper. If you have not sent it to us, please forward it to us so that we'll use it. And let me also,
I've sent it.
Especially for those of us that are participants on this program, tomorrow by 8 o'clock we'll be on Kakaki. The essence is that we have to be able to sell our profession and use advocacy to tell the public what we do. So we want to use the radio, the TV station to do that tomorrow. So, and I think it might be a phone-in program. If it is, I will advise our members to also contribute once we are there, because we are representing the institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And now we have our own distinguished Professor B.T. Aluku back. Prof, sir, it's nice having you back, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Good afternoon, sir. Prof. Professor B.T. Aluku is another grandfather of estate survey and valuation in Nigeria. He has trained many of us and he's still training us. His profile is so rich that we cannot finish highlighting his profile. He was one time the Dean, Faculty of Environmental Science, Obafemi Awolowo University. He's an alumnus of that same university. He has been head of department for several times in that same university. He has headed some agencies, centers, and committee in the same university. He was one time the national chairman of education committee of our great institution, and presently is a member of the membership committee contributing to the growth and development of our institution. Prof, sir, we are proud of you and we love you. Thank you very much. And
Thank
also
you,
a member of our council. Thank you very much. Prof, sir, the Land Use Act enacted in 1978 was meant to standardize land administration system across the country. There have been various discussions on the performance of the act, most especially as it affects the poor and the vulnerable. Sir, to what extent has the Land Use Act been able to achieve its objective? In other words, the Land Use Act, is it a failure or a success? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Let me first of all thank the Nigerian Institution of Estate Surveyors and Valuers and the organizers of this symposium. At least I am not the only person here, but for inviting me, it is an honor and a rare privilege. I also want to state that I am still a student, and I will not refer to myself as a grand professor. In fact, my mentor is seated here, watching me as I present to you. She's assessing my competence. So I am still a scholar. I'm still a student of land policies. Let me go straight to the title of my discussion. That is the Land Use Act, success or failure. For us to be able to assess whether Land Use Act is successful or whether it is a failure, we must look at the antecedent issues before the promulgation of the Land Use Act. And we are all aware that Land Use Act is a product of the committee, the Land Use Panel 1977 set up by the federal government. Land Use Panel was also a product of Anti-Inflation Task Force 1975. It was in the committee, the Anti-Inflation Task Force, that actually recognized land tenure system as one of the problems in our urban areas. And they suggested to the government then that there should be a proper land law governing the ownership of land in the country. And that was why the Land Use Panel was constituted, and all because of public outcry from jurists, from lawyers, from agriculturists, from real estate practitioners and developers, and most of these things are reflected in our national dailies, then the Daily Times, the Daily Sketch, in their editorials. And what are those problems? Incessant rancor and litigation on land as a result of fraudulent sales, inaccessibility of land to government and private individuals, urban land speculation, insecurity of title, and was able to acquire land. Those are some of the reasons why the Land Use Act was promulgated. But ab initio, when the Land Use Panel submitted their reports of Land Use Act, or the success of Land Use Act, the foundation for success and foundation for failure was laid in the promulgation in the Land Use Panel report, because the panel submitted 2 reports, majority and minority reports. But government adopted minority reports submitted by Professor R.K. Udo, who was then a professor at the Department of Geography, and rejected the majority report. What the majority report did was to identify some of the problems of customary land tenure system, and to also make suggestions on how to address some of those problems. But the minority report submitted by R.K. Udo did not identify some of these problems. Udo was part of those who participated actively, but eventually he participated actively in drafting the majority report. But on the eve of submission, he just left the venue and went to UI morning with a minority report. And you can see in his own 2 things that I want us to note and see why it was a failure. Part of the military that set up the Land Use Act. Some of our military then, they had acquired land for grazing purposes in parts of the country. And these are people thinking of retirement, maximize their holdings. You recall that our former president of the institution, Hadi Ismail, alluded to it, that the growth of latifundists, that is, Latin Americans will say, and latifundists are those people who acquired land. Before then, only the families, the communities, and the stool had large estates. So with the hidden agenda, unknown to Professor Udo, but Professor Udo's own agenda was that being a Niger Delta person, and you know the definition of land, wherever you see mineral, it belongs to the state. And in the Niger Delta, oil was at least still here. And so as at that time, it was a state, it was categorized as state land. So in his report, and if you also venture to look at his inaugural letter in 1977 in the Department of Geography, UI, and the land policy for Nigeria 1990 that he submitted, he published. He said his language, the reason for advocating socialist approach is that what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. That if all Nigerians have free access to their land and Niger Delta people are denying of their access to land, then governments will take over all the lands in the country. And that was his own argument. He did not hide his feeling, but he did not know that he was playing into the hands of the military juntas that are still around. And we know where some of them have land. So he actually advocated for land nationalization. And that was what led to the promulgation. The military adopted it because that met their own hidden agenda and the Land Use Act. And when they enacted the Land Use Act, it was meant to enforce property rights in the state and grant user rights to individuals. And to also a plot to use administrative system rather than market system in land allocation. But when you look at it, first, when you talk of land nationalization, state ownership, we are saying that it is the government that owns the land. You and I will allude to the fact that even before the act was promulgated, the customary landowners are the owners of their land. And even in the south, the customary landowners vis-a-vis the English system of landholding. In the north, you have the land tenure system governing the ownership, and they are used to state control and the emir in control of the land in the north. So with the promulgation of the Land Use Act, is it really state ownership? It is definitely no. It is definitely no, because the land nationalization vesting the entire land space within the whole country in the government or within the state by Section 1 in the governor of the state is a misnomer, because a civilized society cannot be a community of trespassers. The original owners cannot be seen to be trespassers. And that was why, if you look at it, the first presenter or second presenter said land grabbers. If you really want to know the land grabbers, those who enacted promulgated the Land Use Act without payment of compensation to the SY owners are the land grabbers, because the original owners were never paid. Of the 10 methods of acquiring land, the United Nations had since abolished government patent, land acquisition by government patent, land acquisition by fiat, because under the United Nations, everybody is seen as a free-born and have a natural right to home property. Then what happened on the 29th of March 1978 was abrogation of people's rights without compensation, and that has been is the source of all the problems that we are facing with the implementation of the Land Use Act. So Nigerians are always interpreting things sometimes upside down. They said when people started agitating that police brutality should be banned in this country, some people said they are Yahoo boys. But if you see the caliber of people in the protest, you will know that they are not Yahoo boys. So Nigerians are calling the rifle owners land grabbers, because government, if you look at Section 1 that first the ownership in the state government, it said subject to the provisions of the Act. Those who are familiar with the interpretation of legislation will tell you that what the Act is doing, it has removed some provisions from the Act, subject to the provisions of the Act, that is, excluding federal land recognized under the Land Use Act, excluding Section 34 of the Land Use Act, excluding Section 36 of the Land Use Act. So all the land, all other lands are vested in the states. It means the Act just vested the ownership of land that are not under the customary that did not belong to the customary landowners in the state. By Section 48 and 49 of the Land Use Act, the customary landowners are still the owners of their land, even under the compensation provisions in Section 29, where family or community land is acquired. The compensation of such land will be paid to the community, to the head, who is to administer such according to native law and custom. So we can see here outrightly that the land still first in the original owner, because they have subsisting interest under 48. And we know that property is both juridical and social, a common place in that anatomy of all civilized societies. If it is both juridical and social, then whatever policy you are formulating, whatever land ownership policy must meet with social needs of the people. At the time it was promulgated, even now, Nigeria is a capitalist country. We have policy of privatization. When you are privatizing agents of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneur. How come that Nigerian government is regulating land ownership? Is it not a misnomer? Then, because for you to be able to enjoy the juridical aspect, which has to deal with the rights, right of use, right of exchange, alienation, it must meet the social needs of the people. And that has to do with culture, that has to do with religion, and so many issues. And if you are bringing a socialist policy in a capitalist economy, you should know it will not fail, it will not work. So that should tell us that land use act cannot work, no matter what we do. Community people, majority of us that are here now listening to this symposium, we all know how we got our land, private land. Is it from government? Let us be sincere. Then, if it is true that it is a state ownership, why should Section 29 be included in the Act? Because Section 29, power of eminent domain, should only operate in a free society, in a capitalist, where the land does not belong to the government. So that when government needs land for developmental projects, government can then acquire exercising power of eminent domain. So you can see conflict. And this is why the Land Use Act cannot work. And in our judicial pronouncements, even in Aboye versus Yakubu, in the Kwara State, former Kwara State, where the customary tenants and customary overlords went to court. The court then, we had 21 states, and the Supreme got to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court invited all the attorney generals and the attorney AG of Federation, including 6 senior advocates. And the judgment is clear there that the customary owners are still the owners of their land, although not the one that will have cleared the matter will have been Salami versus okay, that of 1987, but it only ended at appeal court. There it was clear there that customary laws can still enjoy the remedies available under the customary land tenure system. That is, they can create tenancies on their land. They can exercise forfeiture if the customary tenant is not complying with their needs. And practically, we have also seen when government says we want to develop, we want to construct, they still go through paramount rulers. Why do they go through paramount rulers? Because they have problems. Because they are not the owners. They are just land grabbers. And when you look at the Land Use Act, the only objective that we can say Land Use Act has achieved is to unify the land tenure system. But that is on paper. Practically, the subsisting system, the SY system before the Land Use Act is still what obtains today. No government can acquire communal land without seeing the paramount ruler. The consequences are grave because there is African Air Force and people are ready to die because of land. We see people, my brother Nuhu said, there are so many disputes over land. Now, between herders and farmers, between herders and herders, the boundary disputes in Aguleri, you will see even indigenous farmers and migrant farmers, the thieves and the jokuns. And you see also in different areas, you see landlord-tenant conflicts. All those conflicts are there, and it is difficult to say that the unification is working. It's still not working, but at least on paper, it has unified the tenant system. And why is it not working? Why is something not working? I have told you, the interest in land has not been transferred at all. It still resides in the original landowners, because the indigenous land tenure system will not admit that a land is vacant. So which land was vested in the governor of each state? And when you look at it also from the concept of trusteeship, there are three certainties under the concept of trustee: certainty of object, certainty of subject matter, and certainty of purpose. The object, we all know that the land is to be administered for the use and common benefit of every Nigerian, if you look at the Land Use Act. But if you look at Section 5, it said the statutory right of occupancy can be granted to any person. Any person can be a Gambian, can be a non-Nigerian. The subject matter of under Section 1 is the land that we are talking now. And when you say the subject matter, any of our state governors, are they aware of the land vested in them? The only way to know that most of the lands you see, the vegetation you see, they are not ownerless, is for you to trespass and incur the wrath of the original landowners. You will know that no state has any land. They still go through the paramount rulers. Then what is the purpose? Certainty of purpose must be there. Our governors in the past and presently, they are still using it to persecute their opponents, political opponents. And it's even a matter of political patronage for you to get allocation. I recall my own experience in Oyo State. I was born and bred in Saki and applied for allocation. They said, how can professor pay? And that was how they removed my name. Because they said, he's still a member of this party, a member of that. They removed my name. Our colleagues are also part of them. So it's political patronage. The issue of the land accessibility, whether it will give you tenure security, tenure something, they ignore it. The most expensive land today in you to, and you think other people will not look for alternatives. So, and you said under concept of trusteeship also, if it is true that the governor is holding land in trust for us and Nigerians are trustees of the ownership, then under section 45(1) of the Land Use Act, that allows for delegation of power to the committee set up under sections 2 and 3 of the Land Use and Allocation Committee for urban area, Land Allocation Advisory Committee for rural areas. A trustee cannot delegate the authority vested in him. And because there is a maxim in law, delegatus non potens delegare. So, which means if the governors are delegating to land users, they have violated their rights under the law of trust. So, if you also look at it, that when you talk of the issue of power of eminent domain, even well, maybe I should say that another area that we can say we have recorded success will be land management institutions under the Land Use Act. But because the act practically is not working, this success also is on paper. Because under the Land Use Act, Section 2 will divide the state into urban and rural. Section 3, we have the Land Use Allocation Committee for urban areas, Land Allocation Advisory Committee for rural areas. At least with that, it can also promote gender balance. Because under the customary land tenure system, in most areas, the right of women, their right is secondary. But under the Land Use Act, and even under the family system, when disposition of family land is to be made of communal land, the composition is usually patrilineal in terms of who will be the principal and the head of the family. Although in some communities, in riverine areas, you have matrilineal villages, but they are few. Majority will not agree for women to head. But in constitutional land use panel under the Land Use Act, women can even constitute the majority. They can even be, you can appoint women without appointing any man into the panel. But we have because we were not military then, they just forced themselves and they put in the committees. I cannot see any state. I don't know of Lagos State, and I will tell you why land use seems to be working. It's not working in Lagos State. So there are those committees are not replicated anywhere. If they are replicated, they're just sitting in Lagos State, and that's why some people have criticized Land Use Act, particularly Professor Fabi in 1990 in his inaugural lecture, and it's still corrected today that it's an urban legislation which only superficially touches the tenor problems in our rural areas. So which shows that where you can only see is in our urban areas, and that's why Lagos State is able to implement. Even with that, it's a problem of homonile. The menace of they call them, they said land grabbers. They won't say it's the state government, Sanwo-Olu, that is the land grabber. They will be calling the original owners as the land grabber. All our governors are rather land grabbers. If you disagree with me, why do we have Odua? Why do we have Igbesus? Why do we have, they say militant people in the Niger? They are not militant. Each time you watch this, you see people demonstrating. That oil companies, we don't have state ownership of land in this country. Customary owners are still the owners of their land. And it is also important to note that the Land Use Act came with a new form of right. It is not a code, it is not a lease, it is not a license. If it is a license, it will not be for 99 years. It is not a lease because there are two critical or four the requirements of a lease. Exclusive possession, it must be for a period certain. Then in Nigeria, so it must be registered. It must be registered. But for a period certain, governor can revoke your right. Between Igbenado and Oyegun, we witnessed that. So government can revoke your right. And also, it's not for a period certain, because under Section 8 of the Land Use Act, there is no duration for customary right of occupancy. And the drafter, they knew what they were doing. It is some of us that are confused. If you go and read the minority and majority report, they deliberately did not put duration for customary right of occupancy. They knew it would be in the rural areas, so that the rural areas will not be offended, and there will not be revolt, because majority of Nigerians live in the rural area. That was why they agreed that the Land Allocation Advisory Committee, when they started, the composition were basically the paramount rulers, who are the owners of their land. Government thought it could buy them up, but these are people that will not agree that government can do that. So it's not a freehold, because no interest is vested in the state. The right, proprietary right, is still with the original landowners. How do you call them land grabbers? Our directors will educate the people who are the head of affairs. You are professionals. There shouldn't be, although it's what will take you home. Some of us are here. What we hand cannot take us home, but we will speak the right thing. We will tell the whole world that we disagree. If I cease my salary for years, come and do the right thing in our educational institutions. They said they want to promote land accessibility with the Land Use Act. Consent provision, can consent provision bring tenure security? Then somebody here discussed and raised the issue of land acquired by the state. Yes, government can acquire land in the state. If you acquire land in the state and you refuse to use it for the purpose for which it was acquired, the original landowners have every right to take you to court and retrieve their land back. And if you refuse, and that's why you see most of the problems we have in other areas. In Lagos too, they had it. In Ojodu, in some untitled lands. They were lands acquired by federal government during the Civil War to train as military camp to train soldiers. Immediately after that, people came from different parts of the world, also urban migration, and settled on those lands. Those who sold the land to them are the original landowners. Because after the war, what government ought to have done is to exercise the land and give it back to original owners. But what they would do is selling the same land, profiting. And they said, we are paying premium when you pay millions. How do you watch people sell your land? People say the land is not a problem. It's a big problem. And that's why you see a lot of conflicts over land. And when you also look at it from the land market and dispute end, I've told you there are so many problems. The only thing that the Land Use Act has added, which is also the reason, is because of its failure. The failure of the Land Use Act is the customary state dispute, customary landowners and the state. Before, government may not have access, may not be able to acquire, they exercise power of eminent domain. If they pay compensation, people will allow them. But now, the original landowners are saying governments are land grabbers. Leave our land. So you cannot say there is a state. You cannot point to a state where there is no problem of the tenure system. And we have other problems, conflicts too, others and farmers. Others versus other cattle rustlers. Indigenous farmers and migrant farmers. Most Benue people, they come down to the south here to farm. So in a bid to farm, you need land. You have to approach the landowners. And if you are giving land and you exceed your limit, there will be conflict. And we have landlord and tenant, thanks to the former governor of Lagos State for enacting a law to settle the conflict and boundary disputes. These are not captured within the Land Use Act. And I want to thank Professor educating the audience on the difference between land use policy and land policy. Land policy is broader than land use policy. Land use policy is just an aspect of land policy. When you talk of policies, policies are pre-thought out answers to anticipated problems. So all the problems on land conflict, land use planning, land ownership, which is the tenure system, rent control issue, food security, that's why you see FAO, compensation issues, urban renewal issues, they are part of land. All of them are land policies. Even housing that Professor Nubi delivered a paper on, because if you don't have land, can you have a house? And we are not at the same stage with the UK or US. Land is still physical. It's not yet an economic here. It may be in Lagos, but it's still a social commodity. And that's why people will begin to look at it that you cannot implement the Land Use Act except it meets the needs of this country. Nigeria is a capitalist state. Land Use Act is a socialist state. One of the also something reason for promulgating that was to facilitate planning and zoning program. Perhaps when it comes to urban renewal, maybe government can exercise the power of under Section 29, but relying on Section 1 to say he's the owner, people will not cooperate. We have seen it, even in our state here, when Aregbe came and was doing urban renewal, he had to organize a special program, sensitization, to let people know the benefits. Land Use Act is not land use planning law. So there is limit to which you can, even it's a misnomer to call it Land Use Act. It should be Land Act. And the other aspect is recapture of socially created gains through land. They thought when Land Use Act, the land is vested in the government, if there is socially created gains like betterments, since people will take compensation if their land is taken, government thought the only way to also do it is to levy taxes on those who have benefited from government infrastructure without their own effort. And that is taxation. I still want to tell you that that can only work in few urban centers, because the sociology of most towns and cities in Nigeria, if you go to Osogbo now, you count 40 houses. The people there are within Osun. You will see Osogbo indigenous constituting like 30. The remainder are from Ilesha. They are still the same thing. But if you go to Lagos, why Lagos believe is a no man's land, when the indigenous one is has a house here, you count about 15, you will not see Lagosians. You will see Igbo. You will see Hausa. When an indigenous is saying, "No, I won't pay," the Igbo will run and pay his own. Hausa will go and pay. Before you say it, Lagos will have money. That is the sociology. We should look at the sociology of different areas. It doesn't mean that the act is working. It does not mean that our taxation policies are working. Because if you go to my village and you want to levy them taxes, rural people, some of them cannot boast of 500 naira in a month. Where will they get money to pay? And they will tell you that they inherited their land from their forefathers. So accessibility, I've told you that affordability is not there at all. Let us not deceive ourselves. And that was why Professor Denman said than to have one landlord. Because if you have one landlord, you are developing a monopoly in respect of land transaction. If state is the only unit or institution giving out land, many of us wouldn't have been able to access land. I was given an allocation by a state government, 7 million. My salary, the total gross salary is not up to, is 6 million. 6 million. Where will I get money? Will I kill myself because I must get it? So it is some of these people that we are calling them grabbers that were able, and they are not grabbers, they are the real owners of their land. So affordability is availability. That does not know that has no cadastral survey of the land vested in him. He doesn't know the lands that are vacant. It's not by vegetation that you say land are vacant too, if you don't want problem from people. So which allocation will he do? Then ease of land acquisition, which some of you have talked on. 2 years, if you don't rub hand, you will rob people for you to get something done in this country. It is not that they are doing ease of business transaction that some states have keyed in. One of the presenters said it yesterday. It usually takes time to get allocation. We are not from family. Just approach them. You get family land with ease. And when you say you want to continue with the Land Use Act, nationalizing of that state ownership is not the best thing, because Nigeria is saying we are privatizing. Is it not against our economic policy, our social policy? Secondly, it is Sanwo-Olu that will always administer the land in Lagos according to his own whim and caprices. And there is no amorphous mass of men can now have unitary consciousness. Sanwo-Olu will not implement the common will of Lagosians. Even when he is advised, he will look at it and implement whatever he believes in. In effect, you are creating a dangerous situation, vesting land in one ownership. It should be, we should have as many landlords as possible. The power of eminent domain, our compensation. My brother had already told you that the compensation provision in the Land Use Act is inadequate. In most advanced countries, they see it as compulsory purchase and compensation. Compulsory purchase and compensation. Government is to repurchase. So government considers itself as a trespasser. And what are the remedies available to a trespasser? So those remedies are what the government will pay. And that is why it is not just a person whose land is acquired in UK that will be paid compensation. Those who have suffered demolition as a result of acquisition will also be compensated. But in Nigeria, even the man whose they said land, I know the practitioners, you may not tell us openly. You know how you calculate your compensation value. Otherwise, indigenous landowners will not accept that you want to pay for unexhausted improvements. What of the land? Land is a social security function. People are ready to die. That's why you see people fighting. How come a Yoruba man will die in North and they want to bring the corpse to Yoruba land? It's a social security function. It's a way of our life. And we should, no, so the act is not working. That is the totality of everything. The few advantages are just on individuals. In fact, it's making individuals to be landowners at the expense of the majority. And that's why I say political patronage. And also it consolidated those who promulgated their holdings. You can see some of them, they had land in Igbo or Ta. Those land belong to different people, but they use the Land Use Act to legitimize their holdings. So United Nations is against that. Perhaps if I have questions from the audience, I should be able to touch other areas because it is not easy for me to just speak on this Land Use Act that we handle every day in our daily life here in academia. That's our part of the things we do. So I want to thank the coordinator. I want to thank those who thought I can do something that invited me, particularly the first vice president and also our president for this type of symposium. And my friend too, second vice president. Thank you for the opportunity to present this paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for our distinguished professor, estate surveyor and valuer, and a lawyer. Thank you very much for the wonderful delivery. We've enjoyed your presentation, so wonderful and so insightful. Now I know that the state governor are also land grabbers. So when I see them, I will tell them that they are land grabbers. We have a question from one of the participants for you, sir, Professor. If governors cannot be landlords, what is the best way forward for effective land administration in Nigeria? Prof, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The whole essence is that there should be a workshop or some. The government should, like, if we want to change constitution, we usually have constituent assembly. So when they are changing constitution, they should also know that there is nothing like Land Use Act. It's governors who know that they don't have power to allocate land that does not belong to them. And I've told you, practically they go to the landowners. For any development, they must have seen the paramount ruler who will invite the landowners. In fact, they've all rub hands with the paramount ruler if it's not a communal land. If it's a communal land, it is the trustee, the alter ego of the community. He will collect compensation no matter what grammar you speak. So if governments are not the owners, then which land are they going to be allocating? They are using force everywhere, even in Lagos. They are just using force. We are in democracy. You know the meaning of democracy? Free society. We are still using military tactics to get land from people. We call the owners land grabbers. They are not land grabbers. If the Salami Fasoseke had reached Supreme Court, even the Abioye Fasos Yakubu is enough, is instructive enough. And under the United Nations, land is a human right issue. It's a human right issue. There are many reports by FAO on it. So which land are they allocating? They allocate land at Alausa, Omonile will collect their own. They will come when you clear the site. They will come when you lay the foundation. They will come when you are roofing. Double purchase. The truth of the matter is that Land Use Act is a socialist policy. Nigeria is a capitalist country. It's not working. In urban areas, they are using force to make it work. So we need a new land law. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. We want to thank Professor very greatly for his time and for his wealth of experience. Thank you, sir, for finding time to be with us. We also want to thank all the panelists and our participants. And I want to thank you for making my job an easy one. On this note, I want to hand over to the first vice to conclude the proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's been wonderful. In fact, today too is very explosive. I'm very sure the panelists have done great justice. But before we finally conclude, I am very, very sure that Professor Nubi wants to use 1 minute to say something. So, Professor, by my power and given to me by the President,
thank you so much.
I know you want to say 1 or 2 words, but please, 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I've listened very carefully to my erudite scholars, Professor Aluko. Thank you so much. And Professor Nuhu, Professor, today is the day of the professors. I don't know. It's wonderful. Wonderful presentation. And I want to appreciate every sentiment. There's a problem in this country, but which way forward is what we don't know. But like I said yesterday, no matter how big a tree is, and the cutlass that we are using is so blunted, if we keep cutting, one day the tree will fall. And that's why I see what we are doing. For the first time in 2004, President Obasanjo agreed to our delegates, led by Alhaji Jakonde, to do something about the land use decree, about the land use act. That was the first time. Because prior to that time, the decision of Essence of Wealth and Value wanted to visit President Obasanjo. And he told them, he told them before they got to his office, he said, whoever want to abuse me in my office is the one that will come there and raise the issue of Land Use Act. So when the Nigerian Essence of Wealth and Value leadership then got there, they couldn't say it because they already told them that it's a no-go area. But for the first time, he agreed to Alhaji Jakonde. And he agreed with bitterness. Before Alhaji Jakonde raised that issue in 2006, 2007, No, 2002, 2003. He said Lati, Lati, Lati. I was even thinking that he was older than the man that day. He said Lati, Lati, Lati. You know why we did not use decree. You know why we did it. If we are now saying that it has lost its relevance, we will change it. That was the first time, and it was headlined the following day, that he accepted that land use decree has probably lost its relevance, that we change it. Like Professor Nuhu said, this is the only country in the world that we don't do evaluation of policies. When there is a policy, there's a policy that's established NYSC, there's a policy that's established unitary school. After 2 or 20 years, let's evaluate, let's see the weaknesses, and but like Professor Aluko said, you see, how do people get to own land? Land ownership is always by first settler or by conquest at war.
Thank you, sir.
That is the only two ways that people claim ownership on land. Is when you are the first settler or they conquer you. The Fed military government conquered this country.
Thank you. And
they acquired the land. And by the time they acquired the land, go and look at the Land Use Act. They said the land in each state will be held in trust by the military governor. Military, they put it there. As if military will keep on ruling Nigeria forever. So now that democracy has returned, the people has already conquered the military and pushed them to the barracks. So they should refer the land that they conquer back to the people. That's what we are saying. Every aspect of the decree is anti-estate development. It's anti our profession. And it's anti-development. Let me conclude by saying there was a webinar we had last week, sir. In conclusion, we look at master planning, how towns were not planned in this country, how slums were developing, how sprawl is expanding, and it was traced to the Land Use Act that those who decide the master plan of every town, they are the government people. The land they decide master plan for is under the control of the traditional ruler. So by the time you are saying that this area is for residential, the owner has sold it to industrialists. So by the time you get there, your master plan cannot be implemented. You can't control what you don't own. And it's making a mess of both physical development and economic development of this country. So we must look into it and actually repeal or modify. But we know that they will not modify. And that's why we have to, as a professional, we have to look at the aspect that they have to modify. Because to tell them to repeal, they will not repeal. That is the power they are holding on to, the ruling class. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the presentations. God bless you all. Thank you so much. God bless our great institution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my prof, for your contributions and comments. Well noted. I want to, at this moment, to also want to thank our Pa B. Adesoya. He has been very, very attentive. He is one of our elders of this profession who has been there since listening. He is not a panelist, but I know that he will not be able to make comment, but I have observed him and I know he has been here since. I also want to thank our past president, Estate Surveyor Valua Patonla Ajayi, who was here throughout yesterday, and he has been there since we started this today's event. I want to thank you, sir, because I know that if it is possible, you would have want to make 1 or 2 comments. I also want to thank Estate Surveyor Valua Iboye for your contributions. You've been asking a lot of questions. That shows you've been with us all through. And all other colleagues here present. Before I say the final words, one of our colleagues wants to know, with all these flaws, why is it difficult to amend the land use?
It's a constitutional issue. Because the power that be put it in the constitution of this country. You have to go through constitutional changing process.
Professor Luko, I know. I want to ask is Professor Aluko still with us? If Aluko is still here, since he spoke, yes.
You said the question again, sir.
He said, with all these flaws, why is it difficult to amend the Land Use Act?
Professor Anubi had given the right answer. It is one of the existing law and is incorporated into the Land Use Act. He even gave us the background of the man who promulgated the act, that you don't mention anything relating to Land Use Act in his presence. You know, the second in command was the one who inaugurated the Land Use Panel in 1977, Yaradua. And this is the same man who promulgated the Land Use Act. If you are fortunate to have some of the petitions written by members of the land he occupies in Otan, all other Igbo Ranko, you will know that the Land Use Act was essentially done to legitimize the assay. So unless it is removed from the Constitution, the same way he deleted the collegiate system from the Constitutional Assembly recommendation to satisfy his personal something. Nigerians are governed by people making laws for us. We just have National Assembly. Perhaps with this National Assembly, we can approach them if they are ready and they conduct their sensitization or set up a committee and people present papers. You know, even the land, when the Land Use Panel was inaugurated, to know that land is life, a community here sent in 254 memoranda. Go and read Minority and Majority Report. 254, a community. Their population has increased since then. Then maybe they are less than 10,000. They wrote 200, they sent in 254 memoranda. You read the report, read Minority Report, read the Majority Report. So it is up the National Assembly now and Nigerians generally, because they have to conduct a referendum, even when they have done what they are doing. Although they claim they go to different zones, I don't know whether, but that is illegal. I believe the court will do that. So
thank you, sir.
It is the National Assembly that will, although it can be initiated by anybody.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
They can, but National Assembly will play a key role. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, my prof. And I want to, before I close, I want to thank the members of my committee, the committee that organized this symposium. We are just a three-man committee or three-man committee. The Honorary National Secretary, Estate Surveyor Shola Abeji, who I was always on his neck day and night. My Honorary Secretary, thank you so much. I also want to thank the HMPS, who has been very, very useful too and contributed a lot to the success of this symposium. And I want to thank the President for giving us this opportunity, even though it was not too long that it was conceived and all that, for giving us the opportunity to carry out this symposium. My President, I appreciate you, sir. So on that note, I know that all participants, all the attendees of this symposium will have soft copies of all the panelists. And we plead with the panelists, those who have not yet sent their soft copy, to do so. And I'm also aware, by the instruction of the President, that the communique will surely come out of this. and we will blow it by His grace of God, by the grace of God, so that the government will know our positions on all these matters. So on that note, I want to once again thank you all, and God bless Nigeria, and God bless NISV. This is just the beginning. More of this will come by His grace. Thank you, and God bless you all. Thank you, and bye-bye.